Hey, welcome back. Max Nave Horsemanship here. And today I'm going to talk about, well, just horsemanship in general. And, well, as you can see, I'm sitting in the car here, so I'm not going to get out and do a demo for you right now, although I'm going to go play them in a minute. They're just on the other side of the fence, just over here. Yeah, they're right here. So I am out with the horses, sort of, but I'm going to stop and do a video in the car because, well, rather than unloading everything and just do a video, it just doesn't make sense. So I thought I'd do it in here. But I want to talk about horsemanship in general and how you and I are in a minority. Yes, we are, indeed. If you do things the way I do them, or even similar, we're in a minority. And probably always will be. That's okay. I don't have a big problem with that. I know it's going to happen that way. It's just the way it is. Well, I'm going to start off with a little story. Not terribly long ago, I was cruising through the internet, and I'm always looking for information. And I was reading this one online magazine. Now, I do believe that they also have a printed copy as well that you can get, but like many magazines, they've gone electrical or electronic, I should say, and all the information's online. And this one is fairly reputable. It seems to have a good reputation, from what I can understand. They have a number of articles in there from various horsemen and specialists that tend to give some pretty good information. But there's a little segment in there that says our influences, or something to that effect, and I thought that would be interesting to find out who influences their horsemanship. And so I went to that and clicked on it, and lo and behold, I was there. I thought that was impressive, but that wasn't all of it. It got more impressive as I went on, because I went through the list of all the people that they had, and many of them were people that I knew of that I had drawn influences from, that I had learned from. And I thought, I'm in good company here. And there was a few there I didn't know, but I figured, they're probably all along the same type of thing, so it's okay if they're learning from this general type of horsemanship. That kind of makes sense. That would explain the quality of the magazine and the things that they endorse and promote. So it wasn't just me that's doing this. It's quite a few other guys, and many of them are people that I respect and look up to. But as I said before, we're always going to be in a minority, and, well, this is kind of how it goes. Horsemen and trainers, I think I have kind of mentioned my way of doing things is taking your time and going slow. Now, my target audience is not trainers. It's people that own horses that want to do their own training and want to get a little better at communicating with their horse. And so we encourage this kind of stuff because it just helps with the big picture in many, many ways. Now, trainers are not going to do things exactly the same way, although I think the quality of trainers has improved over the years. The methods are a little more gentle. I think they all still make the mistake of going too fast, which I kind of understand why they do it, though, because they're under the gun. They've got clients out there paying them by the hour, the day, the week, the month. I don't know what the deal is, depending on which one. And the clients unreasonably expect results. And the trainers have to produce what the customer wants. Unfortunately, the expectation's kind of on them to do that. And if they go too slow, the customer's not going to be very happy about that. And this goes back to things like colt starting competitions that I've seen many of, and I do not encourage or endorse those things at all, but I understand why people do it. It's to promote their horsemanship, and that's why you will see in those clinics or competitions, whatever you want to call them, that most of the methods and techniques are pretty sound. The way they're doing things is not horrible. They're just doing it way, way too fast. But people see that stuff, and it sets an example that they think, well, if you can be riding a horse in 6 hours, there's no reason you can't have mine trained in a month or two at the most and done well. So there's that kind of stuff happens. And I understand why the guys do it, is they're trying to promote themselves and say, hey, look at the chops I got. This is what I can do with a horse in a very short period of time. So I should have absolutely no problem at all with your horse, right? Well, that's kind of how it works. And that's why there will probably always be trainers, is because there are always people out there that, for whatever reason, either they don't have the knowledge, they don't have the facilities, or they have an exceptionally difficult horse that's just outside of their wheelhouse, and they'll send it to a trainer to have it trained. And so trainers will always exist, I believe, and they'll probably always do things in a certain fashion simply because of the expectations. But horsemen and trainers, I've talked about it before. I said how they're different, and a good horseman and a trainer are not the same thing, although many trainers are actually pretty decent horsemen. If you were to actually allow them to take their time and say if they were working on their own horse, I'm sure they wouldn't do it near as fast as they would for a client. And that's just the way it is. So, but like I said, that's not my target audience. My target audience is you. The people that want to learn how to be better, that have horses already or are thinking of getting one in the near future, and you want to learn how to deal with it in a fashion that's going to be effective, kind, gentle, build a good relationship, all that good stuff, because that's all important stuff. And my emphasis is take your time and go slow. Don't get in a hurry. And many good horsemen will say similar things, that, it takes as long as it takes, or whatever, that type of stuff. And one of the trends, and even amongst trainers, is using much more gentle, less forceful methods. There's still a small group of people out there that are pretty old school, that get a little bit harsh with the horse. And, well, hopefully in time those people will disappear, and all of the training methods will be much gentler, because there is a trend towards that. And I endorse that wholeheartedly. I am really in favor of, when I watch trainers that, they don't go as slow as I would like to see, but I watch how they do things, and it's really not bad. They're not really doing anything wrong. They're just doing it a little too fast, that's all. That's the only complaint I have. But like I said, I understand why they're doing it fast, because of the expectations put on them by the clients, which I believe in many cases is a little unrealistic. In fact, quite a bit sometimes. So that's why they do what they do. But to do it right, it takes time. And most good horsemen will tell you that. Even the trainers. And that's why I've heard trainers that were talking about how important it is to go slow and take your time doing stuff. And then not long after that, I'd see them at a competition where they were starting colts, and I'm like, I don't understand this, because they're contradicting their philosophies. It just doesn't make sense. But again, like I said, I understand why they do it. I don't encourage or endorse that stuff. I'm not in favor of it at all. But I understand why people take part in it. It promotes themselves. And if they're trying to make a living training horses, well, they're going to want to get their name out there and say, hey, this is what I can do. Look at me. I kind of get it. Is it something that they should be doing? I don't think so, but I understand why they're doing it. So you and I that believe in doing things a little bit slower, or maybe quite a bit slower, depending, we're in a minority. And there's always going to be people out there that say, you're taking too long. You're going too slow. And I've even, had that voiced by other trainers to me. I was working in a facility one time where occasionally other trainers would come and go. And the one guy actually asked me one time, do you ever ride the horses you work with? Because I was doing a lot of groundwork. And it's like, yeah, I ride them when it's time, and not 1 minute sooner. And I do spend a lot of time on the ground, because by the time I get on and ride them, I'm pretty much done. There's not much left to do, because most of the stuff the guys will teach from the saddle, I will do it on the ground. I do things a little bit differently. I'm a little more thorough with my groundwork than some, so that, when I do get to riding them, there's very little to actually do. Not much needs to be taught. They've already had my weight on them. All of the cues I'm going to give them are things that they already know, which really makes things far less eventful when you do ride them for the first time, because you're not asking anything of the horse they don't already understand. And that's an important thing, is, making sure that, the horse knows, one of the trainers, his favorite saying is, never ask a horse a question it doesn't know the answer to. Think about that for a second. I know that sounds a little odd, but, and at some point you're going to, but in the process of teaching them the answer. You're going to teach them the answer, and then when you finally get on and ride them, they know the answer to the question. When you cue them in a certain way, that's the question, and the answer is to do the right thing. And that's what you're going to want. That's what you're shooting for. So the theory of don't ask a horse a question it doesn't know the answer to, I agree with that one 100%. And that wasn't one I came up with. That was one that I heard somebody else say. I don't use those words, but I do it. I do the exact same thing. I just don't use the motto, sort of thing. That's just kind of how things work. But if you follow these methods and techniques and the philosophies that I do, you will be in a minority. I guarantee it. And there's always going to be people saying, you're doing it too slow. And maybe it's because they're just lazy or in a hurry. And I've always said the biggest mistake you can make is getting in a hurry. And I think a lot of people make that mistake, is they get in too big of a hurry and they like to find a faster way of doing things. And to do it right, there just is not a fast way. There is no fast way. But it doesn't have to be difficult. It can be quite easy. You've seen how fast the youngsters progressed. I showed you real-time stuff, how they learn things, and how quickly they learn things. That's how fast it goes. It doesn't take long. Just take your time. Be patient. And don't get in a hurry about stuff. And if you all of a sudden, another guy I watched, he was a great teacher, I thought. I don't necessarily agree with some of the things he does, but he was an excellent teacher. And he would take completely untrained horses, and in his training DVDs, he would use them as an example of his methods. And frequently, he would be in the process of doing one thing, another problem would crop up, and he'd go, oh, excuse me a minute, I have to address this first. And that's quite often what you're going to have to do. You're going to have to just change what you're doing and do something different. But like I said, there's lots of people who are going to go, oh, you just got lucky, you got a good horse. No, you put in the time. You took your time, and you put in your time, you put in the effort to produce a good horse. You didn't start with a good horse. Occasionally that will happen. I've had even one of my own horses, he was just exceptional. But that's not the rule, that's the exception. And most of the time, if somebody ends up with a really good horse, it's because they put in the time, and they did their homework, and they created a good horse. They didn't start with a good horse. And the people that have the not so good horse, they go, oh, that's just the way the horse is. No, I'm sorry, it's what you allow. It's what you have done or what you haven't done because you didn't want to or couldn't be bothered. So, well, I talked about it before when I was talking about my lack of patience. I won't tolerate problems because I know they can be fixed, and I don't want to have to endure problems for years and years. I don't think anybody else should have to if I'm working with somebody else's horse. So I want to make that horse as good as possible before it ever gets into the hands of somebody else, or if I start riding it, I want to have a good horse. So I'm going to put in the time, because in the end, it takes less time. And it doesn't make sense to a lot of people, and that's why I say, people, particularly younger people, they've grown up in a world where instant gratification and things happen fast, and they think training works the same way. No, it does not. The horses have never ever changed. They've been around for thousands of years, and they haven't changed a bit. You still need to have the same patience and take your time with them that you always have had to do to produce good results. But doing it that way is going to put you in a minority. Not everybody's going to do it that way. And, well, if somebody else doesn't want to, I guess that's their problem. They'll have to live with the end result if that's their choosing. But don't let anybody else discourage you because of how you're doing things, because you're going to be in a minority. I know you are. I am too. And if you do things this way, you will be in a minority. Most people are in a hurry and they want things done quickly. Sometimes they will pay trainers to do it because of that, and thinking that, hey, it can be done quicker. I saw them do it in 6 hours at a colt starting competition. Well, it just doesn't work that way. So, I hate to break it to you, but you're always going to be in a minority. Yep, you're always going to be in a minority, and so am I, and I'm okay with it. I realize this is the truth. This is a fact, that there are going to be a group of us out there that are always going to be in a minority. But just being in a minority doesn't necessarily mean we're wrong. Maybe we're right. Maybe the majority is wrong. Well, you can decide for yourself based on the end results and come up with your own conclusion. But if you do it this way, be forewarned, you're going to be in a minority, and you're going to get a little resistance because of it, and a little criticism, and, well, on and on. You kind of get what I'm talking about. I'm sure that many of you have, in one way or another, been a minority in certain groups, and you understand what it's like, that you're always going to have somebody pointing a finger at you saying you're doing it wrong. Well, don't listen to them, because not everything you hear is true. And just because they're in a majority doesn't make them right. The majority of people could be doing things wrong for a long, long time. That's just how it goes. So be a good horseman. Be a minority. I'll stand with you. Have a good day.